The Ducks got their first 4-game road sweep in about a decade. I'll talk about that and more on this episode of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, currently the public address announcer for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So we're going to talk all about this last 4-game road trip that the Ducks embarked on and were ultimately very successful at. Let's be honest, I don't think many Ducks fans figured a 4-game sweep. When I looked at the schedule, I figured, okay, they're probably going to get 5 points. Best case scenario, 6 points. That's what I figured going into this road trip. Never in my wildest dreams did I think they would actually get all 8 points, but here we are. And my biggest takeaway from this, I have a plethora of big takeaways. I could talk about the goaltending. I could talk about certain, people, personnel, talk about coaching. But what I want to talk about the most is that second line for the Anaheim Ducks. The second line for the Ducks, in my opinion, has been, excuse the noise there, that has been, in my opinion, the best line for the Ducks by far. When I think about all the other lines the Ducks have, defensive pairings, those are fine. First line with Leo Carlsson, Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, they haven't really gotten the results that we were hoping for. So when I look at that second line of Ryan Strome, Mason McTavish, and Frank Vatrano, in my mind, they have had the best puck movement. They've had the best overall underlying stats, and they've obviously been producing at an alarmingly high rate, which good for them. Speaking of Mason McTavish, actually, let's talk about Mason McTavish first. The Pittsburgh game. McTavish taking the penalty and then leaving the box right in the nick of time to get the game-winning shorthanded goal in Pittsburgh. That beats what happened last season in Pittsburgh. If you guys remember what happened last year in Pittsburgh, the Ducks had a chance to win in overtime in Pittsburgh and ultimately blew the game. This was the one where Trevor Zegras had a wide open breakaway shot and chose to pass it. What a turn of events. Mason McTavish, he's on a breakaway, but he winds up taking the shot and scoring the game-winning goal with 12 seconds left. So maybe this is a difference right now between McTavish and Zegras. McTavish is starting to take over games. He's starting to become that player that we were all hoping for when the Ducks selected him number 3 in the 21 NHL draft. This is the results that we've been waiting for a while. And I've already seen a couple of tweets, one from John Broadbent saying, maybe hold off on the jersey and wait till McTavish wears the C. All right, let's pump the brakes for a second there. I still think Troy Terry is going to be the next captain, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mason McTavish gets a good look at maybe an alternate captaincy down the line eventually when you have other players leaving, and other players are going to leave, folks. But McTavish is already exhibiting the kind of qualities that you could see in a future captain or alternate captain, more than likely alternate captain. Also, keep in mind, Mason McTavish is still very, very young. Let me repeat that. Mason McTavish, he can barely drink in some spots. Partially joking. He's only 20 years old, folks. He's not even 21. He's not even legally allowed to drink in the U.S. As I said, he can drink in some parts of Canada, but for the time being, he cannot drink in the States. So not even 21 yet, and he's already exhibiting some of the best play that I've seen from a Ducks player all season long. He's already got 11 points in 9 games for the Ducks. He's on pace. Yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this now. He is on pace to score 99 points this season, assuming he plays every game. Actually, realistically, 100 points. He's on pace for a 100-point season. Ooh, imagine all the writers out there that kind of wrote off the Ducks. Can you imagine if Mason McTavish gets a 100-point season right now? I would be laughing all the way to the bank because McTavish is deserving of all the success. And his line mates, they've been doing just as well. One has been doing better in my opinion. Ryan Strome, I think, has been a strong player for the Ducks this season so far. And he's been kind of, I don't want to say the yin to the yang, but he has been the perfect, and I also don't want to use the word sidekick, but I'm going to here. He's been the perfect sidekick for McTavish and Vetrano because Ryan Strome is not afraid to get to the dirty areas. He's not afraid to get those 50-50 pucks. He is not afraid to put the team first because already he's got 11 points this season, 2 goals, 9 assists. And he's making some brilliant passes. At least 3 that I could think of off the top of my head. At least 3 passes through the Royal Road that have directly led to goals. So when I think of a perfect line, I think of those 3. Oh, and I haven't even gotten to Frank Vetrano yet. So let's talk about Frank Vetrano. He got another hat trick. Frank Vetrano has been that guy. He's been the perfect Italiano player. Frank Vetrano this season so far 10 points but 9 goals. He's leading the Ducks in goals so far this season with 9 goals. That's astounding. But I'll do you one even better. Frank Vetrano has 9 goals, which leads the league. Let me repeat that. Frank Vetrano is currently leading the entire National Hockey League in goals with 9. Better than everybody else. Better than David Pastrnak. Better than Tyler Toffoli. Better than Austin Matthews. Better than anyone on the Devils roster. Better than anyone on the Oilers roster. Frank Vetrano is right now in his prime. Right now. And he's proving himself to be that ultimate just breakthrough scorer that we've been waiting about a year for. Last season, 22 goals, still pretty good. But now that he has the perfect line with him, and now that he has Mason McTavish with him on a more regular basis, yeah, make that line stick. I'm not saying make that line the first line, because the first line should still be Terry Zegras and Carlson. But put a lot more respect on Ryan Strome. Put a lot more respect on Mason McTavish. And put a lot more respect on Frank Vetrano. Between those 3 in 9 games, they've amassed a whopping 32 points. Let me repeat that. That line has 32 points, which leads the NHL. So you tell me that your line is better for your team. I invite all the other Locked On hosts, all 31 other Locked On hosts, to think of a better line than Strome, McTavish, Vetrano, because you can't. Yes, I know it's a small sample size through 9 games, but as of now, they are, in my mind, the best line in the National Hockey League. To me, anyway. And that has led to the Ducks having an excellent record to start the season. Again, a 4-game road sweep. First time that's happened in about a decade. All right, we're going to head into the first intermission. I'm going to talk more in detail about the last 4 games, more in detail about that Pittsburgh Penguins game, because there's a lot to break down from that game. And I'll talk about some of the other players on the other side. And now, a word from Indeed. And indeed, the Ducks are doing well. And indeed, is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Maybe you need the perfect teammates like the Ducks. Maybe you need the perfect complements to where you are working. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you could do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. And I've used Indeed in the past before to find perfect job, and it has been just amazing. And if you apply through Instant Match, you are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see it in search, according to US Indeed data. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. So visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application. Pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, live from Acrisure Arena. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez, here to talk about the last 4 games, and we're going to gloss quickly over just that game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, because that took place over a week ago. But a good ending to that game, and I just talked about that second line. Frank Vatrano scored the game winner in overtime in Columbus. So that's how the road trip began. And that was a beautiful breakaway goal by Frank Vatrano in overtime. And also got to give credit to Lukas Dostal, who was brilliant in that game. Dostal saw a plethora of shots. The bakery was indeed closed. He saw 37 shots, stopped 35 of them. He was brilliant in this game. Then the next game against the Boston Bruins. This was the one that I will admit I had this as a loss, because the Bruins at the time had the best record in the league, and at the time they were undefeated. So who would have seen that coming? Who could have seen the Boston Bruins eventually, succumbing to the Ducks? I didn't see that coming. Who saw the Bruins blow a 2-goal lead late in the game with a minute 55 left? Leo Carlsson scored his second of the season. And then Troy Terry finally bust through with his second of the year. So that tied it up at 3 with only a few seconds left. And then my guy, Mason McTavish, scored the game-winning goal. Thing of beauty. So that was a late mad rally, and McTavish completed the comeback and had that epic celly where he kind of went down on one and he went, yeah! Oof. That gave me some feels right there. So McTavish, perfect goal to end the game 4-3 in overtime. That was against Boston. Then we had just a few nights ago, actually I think this was over the weekend, where the Ducks just put a whooping, a good old-fashioned butt-kicking in Philadelphia. And Philly is off to a good start, too. That's why I said I expected the Ducks to get 5 points. I expected a win against Columbus. I expected a win against Pittsburgh. Lost to Boston. Maybe a point against Philly, because Philly's also off to a hot start. I didn't expect the 7-4 butt-kicking of the Flyers. And that was where the Ducks got off to a 4-0 lead, almost like that. Goals from Strome, Vatrano again, then Henrique. And then later in the game, hey, guess who finally scored his first of the season? Trevor Zegras. But I want to talk about the very end of the game. With about 8.5 minutes left, Frank Vatrano got his second hat trick of the season. Let me repeat that. Frank Vatrano got his second hat trick of the season. His second hat trick in the month. Not many Ducks players have gotten hat tricks in 1 month, and I think I'll have to later go and research this. But, Ducks with multiple hat tricks in a month, that list cannot be long. But he got it, and that was the final score, 7-4. Oh, boy. And those were some nice goals by Frank Vatrano as well. Then we got to talk about the game against Pittsburgh that just took place Monday night. Okay. That Pittsburgh game was a strange game. The Ducks, in a way, they had no business winning that game. And I mean that in the sense that the Ducks had some really poor play and some pretty poor defense at times, where they were letting the Penguins just kind of waltz their way into the zone and take shot after shot, not just shot after shot, taking high danger shot after high danger shot. Can I share this stat with you? According to Natural Stat Trick, the high danger chances that were in the Pittsburgh Penguins game, 27-13 in favor of the Pens. The Ducks allowed 27 high danger chances? Are you kidding me? Oh, by the way, they also allowed 42 shots. Okay, that's not terrible. They allowed 99 shot attempts, according to Natural Stat Trick. Let me repeat that. They allowed 27 high danger chances and 99 shot attempts. Oh, that's ugly, folks. That is just ugly. The Ducks got 42 shots against, 27 blocked shots, and 30 missed shots by the Penguins. And somehow Pittsburgh lost the game. I still don't know how it happened. I mean, the Ducks were as good as dead late in that game. They were down 3-2. Then Mason McTavish scored a nice wrister early in the third period, tied it up at 3. Then the very end of the game, where, by the way, Coach Greg Cronin got himself ejected because of what I thought was a bad no-goal call, where apparently Sam Carrick was in the crease and got just a bit of Tristan Jarry and got called for goaltender interference, which I think was, I'm just going to put it out there, not a good call. Not a good call. I don't blame Greg Cronin for cursing out the refs on that one. And hey, he got himself ejected. He got himself freaking ejected from the game. And you know what? I applaud that. I applaud that from Coach Greg Cronin. Because you wouldn't see... Okay, I'm going to just say it. You wouldn't see Dallas Eakins stand up to his team in that manner. Now, Coach Eakins was behind his guys. But you wouldn't see him just get absolutely pissed off at the refs. And you wouldn't see him get ejected in that fashion. So credit to Greg Cronin for having the balls to do that. And then late in the game, when the Ducks were 2 men down, yes, the Pens were 5-on-3. As soon as McTavish's penalty ended, miracle happened. Adam Henrique got a stick out. Mason McTavish went on a breakaway, went top shelf right over Jarry, and scored the game-winning goal with about 12 and a half seconds left. Ooh. I will admit, I kind of yelled a little bit when that goal scored. I was like, yeah, I let some emotion out. That was the perfect ending to the road trip. Mason McTavish, that was his second of the game. That was brilliant. Just an absolutely brilliant shorthanded goal to get the victory. Ducks win it 4-3 against the Pens. Gosh, I just love that. I just loved that goal so very much. All right, we're going to head into the second intermission and talk about some other players over the past few weeks. And I want to talk about goaltending a little bit. Stay locked in. And now, a word from Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Maybe Mason McTavish or Frank Vetrano could score 50 goals. He's on pace for it, folks. Maybe the Ducks could make the playoffs, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, You can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Maybe you could see Frank Vatrano scoring another hat trick. If you want to put money on a Frank Vatrano goal, then what are you waiting for? If you had put money on Mason McTavish scoring a goal against Pittsburgh, you would have won big, I'm telling you. All you got to do is pick whether studs like McTavish or Vatrano or Strome will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. So use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. That's the code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with Jason J.D. Hernandez live at Acrisure Arena. And by the time you watch this will be right after I did public address for the Dia de los Muertos game. I'll actually talk more about that tomorrow for Locked On Goals. But, just a treat to do that. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Lukas Dostal, because he came into the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins and really put himself in a situation to help the Ducks succeed. Let me share this with you. This according to Hockey Stat Cards. Lukas Dostal, in 5 games, has allowed 13 points. His expected goals, allowed, 17.85. So he is above average. He was expected to allow almost 18 goals, and he's only allowed 13. That's quite good. In the National Hockey League, Lukas Dostal is 7th in the entire NHL for goalies. For the goalie, or for the game score average, Jeremy Swayman tops of the list, 1.99 average. Jonathan Quick, believe it or not, 1.87. Yeah, Quickie's done pretty well so far. Joseph Voll, 1.43. Logan Thompson for the Golden Knights, 1.27. Thatcher Demko for the Canucks, 1.20. The Canucks have a good start so far. Jake Allen, 1.06 for the Habs. And there's Lukas Dostal, 0.97. Game score average. He has been 4.85 goals allowed, better than expected. He's right there with some of the elite goalies in the league. He's right there with Jeremy Swayman. He's right there with Logan Thompson. He's just above Jake Ottinger. Yes, he's doing better in that stat than Jake Ottinger, according to Hockey Stat Cards. Better than Linus Ullmark. Better than Spencer Martin. Jordan Binnington, Vejmelka. I mean, the list could go on here, but you see where I'm going with this. Better than Igor Shesterkin. Much better, by the way, than John Gibson, who is at about average. He's expected to allow 13 goals so far this season. He's allowed 12. So Gibby, right about league average, just slightly better than league average. Not too bad. Which brings up a big question that I'm definitely going to talk about much more in depth on a future podcast. But is Lukas Dostal ready to take over the number 1 spot for the Ducks? That's something that we've got to think about, and I think I'll think about this more in the coming games, because I have a feeling that Lukas Dostal is going to get a few starts, and frankly, he deserves it. He deserves as many of those starts as possible. Beginning of the season, I said, give Gibby 50 games, give Dostal 32. You know what? Scratch that. Half and half. Give Gibby 41 games, give Dostal 41 games. See what happens there. All right, we're just about out of time, so I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. And also, thanks to those of you that came to Acrisure Arena for Dia de Muertos or who have sent support throughout the season. It's so appreciated. With that said, welcome to November. And that's going to do it for this podcast. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, ad-free on Amazon. We are also on SiriusXM, so check us out there. You could follow me on Twitter or on X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter or X is at LO_Ducks. You could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. And thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason J.D. Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.